She thought it was just another busy night at the restaurant, until her manager grabbed her arm and forced her toward a hallway with no cameras. A black waitress, cornered, isolated, and outnumbered. She didn't know why he was dragging her into the bathroom, but she knew one thing. Something was very, very wrong. What she didn't realize was that someone else was already watching, someone whose power could shatter the entire system protecting men like him. And when he stepped forward, everything changed. Comment and tell us where you're watching from, and subscribe for more stories. Amara Johnson had spent nearly 2 years inside the pristine walls of Belford's Elegance, one of Chicago's most celebrated fine dining restaurants. To most people, it was a glamorous place, white tablecloths, polished crystal, and high-profile guests who expected perfection. But for Amara, it had become something else entirely. It was a place where she worked twice as hard to be treated half as fairly, a place where she learned to survive every shift with quiet strength and careful composure. She was the only black waitress on staff, and though she carried herself with the professionalism the restaurant demanded, she felt the subtle tension that followed her everywhere. It lived in the lingering stares, the whispered comments she wasn't meant to hear, and the cold arrogance of those who assumed her presence meant she should be grateful just to be allowed in the room. Still, Amara pushed forward. She needed this job, and she was good at it. Most nights followed the same rhythm, greeting tables, memorizing orders, moving gracefully through the noise of clinking glasses and softly lit corners. But beneath the routine, there was something darker growing, a pattern she could feel even when no one spoke it aloud. Bradley Hayes, the white manager who controlled everything from scheduling to staff discipline, had been watching her more closely lately. His behavior wasn't loud, but it was consistent. Sudden mood shifts, unnecessary criticism, and subtle comments that carried the weight of something more dangerous. Amara sensed that something was coming, something she couldn't quite name. She noticed the way Bradley lingered near the cash desk after certain high-profile customers left, the way envelopes changed hands, the way he avoided cameras at key moments. She didn't know what he was hiding, but she knew corruption when she saw it. What she didn't realize was that the pressure building around her wasn't just workplace tension. It was the beginning of a storm that would expose everything hidden behind the restaurant's polished image, and her role in it would be far greater than she ever imagined. The shift that changed everything didn't begin dramatically. It started like any other evening, polished silver placed neatly, wine glasses held to the light, and Amara steadying herself before stepping into a space that too often underestimated her. But something in the air felt heavier. The staff moved differently, quieter, as if they sensed a tension they couldn't name. And at the center of it stood Bradley Hayes, the manager who had grown bolder in the past months, convinced that his authority made him untouchable. Amara had learned to read him the way one reads weather, small signs that a storm was forming. A slammed drawer, a forced smile, a sudden shift in his tone when speaking to her compared to everyone else. She noticed the way he hovered near her station, offering false supervision that only masked his need to control her movements. And each passing week, the pattern grew sharper. He found reasons to criticize her, reasons that would never be questioned because he held the power to shape whatever narrative suited him. But underneath the pressure, Amara had begun to document what she saw, not out of rebellion, but out of survival. She noticed that after certain political figures or wealthy businessmen dined, Bradley lingered near the payment station long after the staff had cleared the table. She watched him handle envelopes with the confidence of someone who believed no one would ever question him. Cameras conveniently didn't cover those angles, and he made sure only Amara worked those tables, as if positioning her in harm's way would secure his schemes. Still, she stayed careful, moving through each shift with quiet precision, never revealing that she noticed the inconsistencies. But Bradley noticed something too. Her calm, her strength, her refusal to shrink. And that refusal made her a threat in his eyes. The breaking point arrived when a high-profile figure left an unmarked envelope on the table, an action Amara didn't react to outwardly. But Bradley watched her closely that night, studying her posture, waiting for a sign of fear or complicity. When none came, the tension inside him twisted into something darker. He wanted control, and in his mind, her silence meant defiance. As the night progressed, he began positioning himself near shadowed corners, tracking her movements more aggressively. Amara tried to maintain her routine, but she could feel the shift, his gaze lingering with a weight that felt invasive. A few servers avoided eye contact, sensing something unspoken unfolding but not daring to intervene. This restaurant was a world built on hierarchy, and Bradley stood near the top. Hours passed, and the crowd thinned. The energy inside the restaurant dimmed, leaving only staff members closing out their stations. Amara prepared receipts, keeping her composure despite the growing unease building in her chest. She sensed Bradley waiting, like a predator delaying its strike until the vulnerable moment. Closing tasks took her toward the back hallway, a narrow stretch with no cameras and no witnesses. It was a place designed for staff, but tonight it felt like a trap tightening around her. She could hear Bradley's footsteps trailing behind, not rushed, not loud, but deliberate. Each step raised the stakes higher, and Amara understood that whatever he intended wasn't routine oversight. She quickened her pace, but it didn't matter. He was too close, too determined. In that isolated corner of the restaurant, Amara realized the situation she had been sensing for months was finally unfolding into something dangerous, something meant to intimidate her into silence. The walls around her felt tighter, the air colder, and the truth was unmistakable. Whatever Bradley planned to do next would cross a line that could no longer be hidden. And somewhere in the distance, without her knowing, another presence had already begun moving toward them. Someone whose arrival would turn this quiet threat into a collision powerful enough to expose everything the restaurant had tried to keep buried. The quiet hallway behind the dining room had always felt like a forgotten corner of the restaurant, a place meant for storage, staff whispers, or brief moments of breath between hectic shifts. But tonight it became something far more dangerous. Amara sensed it the moment Bradley Hayes followed her into that narrow space. His footsteps were too close, his presence too heavy, and the air too still. It was the kind of isolation that strips a person of safety, leaving only instinct and fear behind. The corridor had no cameras, no witnesses, just cold painted walls and a closed bathroom door at the end. Amara felt her chest tighten as she realized Bradley had chosen that exact moment, that exact location, because he believed she had no power there. To him, a black woman in a white-dominated environment was an easy target, someone whose voice could be dismissed, whose concerns could be rewritten, and whose vulnerability could be exploited. The tension that had quietly built over months now cracked open. Bradley moved with the confidence of someone who thought he controlled every outcome, every consequence. Amara felt his intention before she saw it, the tightening grip, the force guiding her deeper into the empty space, the sense of a trap closing around her. Every past insult, every dismissed complaint, every subtle act of discrimination converged into this single, terrifying moment. Her heart pounded, her breathing tightened. She understood the danger instantly. She was cut off from the world, and Bradley believed no one would question whatever story he later crafted. For months, she had endured his manipulation, his racist undertones, and his growing need to assert authority over her. But this moment was different. This moment was calculated. Yet somewhere behind the rising panic she felt something else, a quiet, steady anchor she didn't fully understand, because she wasn't actually alone. While Bradley tried to corner her, another figure had already entered the restaurant through the back entrance. Lucas Bennett, her husband, known in powerful circles for influence few dared to challenge, had arrived minutes earlier. He had sensed something was wrong when Amara's tone changed on her routine check-in call. He knew her calm too well, the kind of calm she used when she was trying to survive something alone. Now, as Bradley's behavior escalated in that camera-free hallway, Lucas stepped silently into the shadows behind him. His presence was sharp, controlled, and dangerously observant. Two private security associates followed at a distance, standing ready but silent. Amara didn't see them. She only felt the cold wall closing behind her and the realization that Bradley was crossing a line he couldn't retreat from. But as the tension reached its breaking point, the energy in the hallway changed. The shift was subtle, like a storm suddenly halting right before it strikes. Bradley did not realize that his moment of unchecked power was about to end. And Amara did not yet see the figure stepping forward. But she was seconds away from witnessing the turning point that would transform her fear into a force far more powerful than anything Bradley ever controlled. When Lucas Bennett stepped fully into that hallway, the atmosphere shifted so sharply that even Bradley seemed to feel it. His false confidence drained, replaced by the sudden awareness that his actions were no longer happening in secret. For Amara, the moment felt surreal, fear melting into an overwhelming sense of validation. She wasn't imagining the danger, she wasn't exaggerating the discrimination, and she wasn't powerless. The situation unfolded quickly from there. Lucas took control, his team documented the scene, and the truth that Bradley had worked so hard to hide began unraveling piece by piece. Bradley's behavior didn't disappear into the shadows he relied on. Instead, it became the beginning of a larger reckoning. Evidence he thought he had buried surfaced. His pattern of targeting Amara, manipulating systems, and exploiting the restaurant's power structure came to light through the very documentation he never knew existed. The hierarchy he depended on collapsed around him, not because of violence or retaliation, but because the truth, once visible, couldn't be ignored. And for Amara, the impact extended far beyond that night. She had spent months navigating quiet hostility and subtle racism that so many black women endure in workplaces across the country. She had pushed through with resilience, professionalism, and dignity, even when the environment made it clear that she was expected to shrink. But her story didn't end in silence. Instead, it became a reminder of how often black women are placed at the crossroads of discrimination and expectation, told to endure, told to be grateful, told not to challenge the system. The fallout was swift. Bradley faced consequences he once believed he was above. The restaurant's leadership, forced to confront what had been allowed to happen, publicly addressed the failures they had ignored. And Amara stepped forward not as a victim, but as a catalyst for change. Her experience exposed something much bigger than one manager or one restaurant. It revealed the reality that racism thrives when silence is the norm, and justice begins the moment someone refuses to accept the role they've been assigned. So the real question becomes, how many more lives must withstand this before society finally confronts the systems that allow it? If this story moved you, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe to Black Community Struggles for more powerful stories about justice, truth, and our community's fight to be seen.